Should bereavement leave from work be extended so people can take time off when a friend or distant relative dies? Workers could be entitled to a week off to mourn under proposals being considered in the Employment Rights Bill, according to the Telegraph, which says the changes would extend bereavement leave to cover the deaths of in-laws, cousins, nieces, and what it describes as distant uncles. Ministers have not yet decided which relationships would be covered under the rules, but one option being considered is that the nature of the relationship really doesn't matter. The actual key thing is how important was this person in your life? So you could then be naming a close friend who's passed or somebody who's not technically family but was like a mentor or whatever. So currently bereavement leave is only mandatory for the death of a child under 18. For other losses, there's no universal legal right to time off, although many employers offer compassionate leave or allow staff to use other time off rights or sick leave. What do you think? Many of us have friends who played just as vital a role in our lives as family members do. Maybe you had to miss a close friend's funeral because you couldn't take the time off work because they said, I'm sorry, that doesn't count. Or maybe you're an employer and you're concerned that if this comes in, you won't have anyone in the job. We're joined by Stella Tstantekidou, political commentator and former Labour aide, and Joanna Marchong, the head of external affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. Stella, I know you think this is on the right lines, this idea.
Yeah, of course it is on the line, right? And it's. I have to say, it's not distant family that they are saying. It's not distant uncles. They said chosen family, which is defined as close friends and relationships that are not related but take the place of a traditional family. And also the time off that would qualify someone would be unpaid. It wouldn't be paid. And I think that this is something that most people understand.
But I think with the Telegraph reporting it, when they say distant uncle, they mean an uncle who lives 300 miles away, but who you loved very much.
But this is very similar. The intention behind the change would not be so that anybody who you know passes away and you take a week of unpaid leave, and you don't have to take it either. But it is going to be there so that if, for example, you're a flatmate or your romantic partner, obviously there is the discretion of a business to allow you to take unpaid time off. But that's the same thing as saying, oh, people don't need to have statutory sick leave because businesses are compassionate, they are understanding. Of course, they would give sick leave to their employers. Well, that doesn't always happen. And in the same way that workers are expected to have trust in their employers, to be compassionate when something happens to someone who they are not related to them by blood, but they happen to have a very, very big and important place in their life, and they need to take a few days off. The same way that the worker is expected to trust the employer, why shouldn't the employer then trust that a worker is not going to abuse that right in the same way that we trust that people will not be abusing the right to call your doctor and take a sick leave?
Yeah, what about that, Joanna? Because it does sound, the way Stella puts it, it sounds just compassionate.
Yeah, I think when looking at this story, everyone's saying the word compassionate and it immediately pulls on your heartstrings. But if we take a logical kind of point of view and look at it from a business point of view, this is one policy within the Workers' Rights Bill, which the government have already said is going to cost about £5 billion a year for businesses. I mean, when we're talking about bereavement and we're throwing up into question so many different factors that there are and it's so broad. The definition is broad. Close friends and relationships that aren't related to you but take the place of traditional relationships. What does that mean?
Well, I'll give you an example. Let's say that your next door neighbour helped you a lot when you were suffering a nervous breakdown and you've got no other family and they suddenly die because they've been struck by lightning. I mean, let's take it as a terrible, crushing bereavement and you've got nobody else.
Well, also, I think I understand that.
Doesn't that merit a day off?
Well, potentially, but that's something that you and your employer could work out together. And obviously, employers don't want a sobbing kind of mess, someone that's not going to be able to work. I think we underestimate how much employers actually want their staff to be happy and to work as efficiently as possible and to actually perform better. And usually that's not when they're grieving. So these things can be worked out.
Understood. Stella, why not do what Joanna says? Leave it to the relationship between the worker and the boss.
But if we should trust the employer to do that, which we have examples where that hasn't happened, why should we not trust the worker to not abuse that right? There are other examples as well. For example, a lot of people have flatmates. I have a flatmate. She's the same age as me. We are not a couple. We are not related. If suddenly something happened to her, knock on wood, why should I not have the right to take unpaid leave off? I understand that there could be an anxiety about about people suddenly saying they can't come into work. But how is this different to any other kind of excuse? The only difference here is that the worker is protected from being fired or from this being seen as them not asking for permission for something that is legally their right.
Yeah, but do you dispute, by the way, Stella, Joanna's figure that it's $5 billion a year it's going to cost business? Do you think it'll be that expensive?
I have no idea how they would be able to make up such a figure, how they would be able to predict. Because if Joanna is right, and people are already having such discussions with their employers, which I do believe it is already happening. I do believe most employers are compassionate. Most employers will just give the day off to a staffer. But if that is already happening, then I don't see why the fallout should be so massive.
Your problem, Joanna, with it is that it's going to be mandated. Is that right?
Yes. So can I just clarify that the £5 billion a year is for the Workers' Rights Bill as a whole, which has many more policies. My problem is it will be mandated, and what it will do is make businesses uncertain for employing for when they are employing people. We're talking about, we don't know how long they're going to be entitled to bereavement. We don't know what documents they'll need as proof. You don't know when they can claim it, so they might be able to claim a Friday off for 6 months, or they might be able, the relative dies in January and they're saying in October, actually, I want to take my bereavement leave now. And you don't know if they're going to have notice. Now, businesses have other costs that they have to factor in. We're talking about potentially hiring other people to fill that role. We're talking about more expensive overtime. We're talking about a slower work stream because we're going to have to deal with the fact that someone is missing. And all these things are now being called into question, along with other measures in the Workers' Rights Bill, which means adding to all the other pressures that businesses are having, they're even more stressed and there's even more uncertainty.
Stella?
If someone is dishonest, how is this different from calling and saying that you are sick? Because obviously, if only if someone is dishonest, they would say, this person who I don't really mind, I don't need to take a week off, but given that I have this plumb statutory right, I'm just gonna use it and take the week off regardless of what is happening at my workplace because I'm a bad worker and I don't care.
Go on, Joanna.
Well, I actually think you're proving my point there, because we've seen a rise in sick leave. We've seen businesses really struggle with the fact that the number of sick days lost, even if you look in the public sector, it's somewhat similar in the private sector, where they can't do anything about it. So we're talking about the same thing. That's so when we open it up, we are opening ourselves up to the same crisis happening with sick days, happening with bereavement leave as well. And it might not be on the same scale, but it still exists.
So do you think that because some people lie about sick leave that we should take away the right to sick leave?
I think we shouldn't mandate it because every case is different. And to spot the cases where people are taking advantage, you need your employer who is there with you all the time, seeing how you work, to realise whether is it true, is it not true, and then they have the right to act on that.
I was just going to say, Stella, isn't somewhere in this the employer needs to have the right to say you come off it. Surely. So you come up to me, Stella, let's say I'm your employer, and you say, I have to have a day off because so-and-so has died. But the thing is, you've had already 8 days off this year, your flatmate, your this, etc. And I say, Stella, come off it. This is getting silly now.
Surely. The employer actually is the person who has the power not to promote, the power not to give more shifts. the power to say, well, you lost time, then you have to make it up here or whatever. It is the employer who has all of that power. I do not understand that. Why should we trust? If we are being trusting, which I do believe in trust and generosity and benefit of the doubt, but if we are giving that to employers, why not give that to workers? Why do we expect that people will have the audacity? And of course, some will do. But why do we think that most people are going to have the audacity to call and say, oh, well, you know what, it's a busy week at work and I'm just going to pretend that my aunt who died, that I really cared about her, which again, this is, someone has to decide about their own morals first, because this is not this is not about having unpaid time off every time somebody who you know dies. It's about when somebody who you know dies, who you do not have, who is not your child under 18, which is what the law is right now.
Thank you so much.